Good. Can you guys all hear me at the back? In the front, everyone? Good. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to present to you tonight for this first session of the data science community in Ghent. My name is Sébastien. I'm part of the founding team of the Brussels data science community, and I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Real Impact Analytics. Basically, it's the startup, fast-growing startup building big data apps for the telecom operators. And I'm going to present here with Edward, which is Chief Data Scientist in-house at the Data Innovation Hub.
Data scientist in residence.
Data scientist in residence. And he led the project of Doctors Without Borders that we did together with the Brussels data science community. So today we want to talk to you about data for good, and why is it so? Is because we both really believe in the power of data to help tackle sustainable development goals. So I'm going to quickly cover what is data for good first, just give you a quick overview and why you should be interested in data for good. And then we're going to deep dive a bit more into the specifics and what we concretely did in our project. So, what is data for good? Well, it's about taking any type of data, complex, very simple, and using every type of data science or analytics technique, whether it's super simple or super complex, and use it in order to tackle humanitarian or social issues. Think of the 17 social development goals, sustainable development goals published by the UN, for instance. The problem is that a lot of NGOs are sitting on a huge gold mine of data, whether it's produced by their own activity or from external data sources. The problem is that they have absolutely no clue on how to use this data. They don't know how to extract the data, they don't know how to transform it, they don't know how to convert it into insights, right? So on the other side, you have data scientists, which have all the skills necessary to do that. So the idea of data for good is to gather data scientists and let them work for free for NGOs to help them tackle their problems. So it's very positive for making this world a better place, obviously. But why I really like data for good, actually, is because it's not only good for the NGOs and the social organizations. It's also good for you. As a data scientist, well, you most likely find in your job a lot of autonomy. You can do whatever you want. You have a lot of flexibility. You have a lot of mastery because you're the expert in your field and you learn a lot. But often you tend to lack a bit of purpose. Why are you doing it? Why are you waking up every morning and go to work? So the cool thing about data for good is that it gives you the three of them. Mastery, because it's a great chance to learn. As Sab was mentioning earlier, I mean, data for good hackathons, for instance, it's a great opportunity to go out of your work, meet other data scientists, share expertise with them because they might have another area of expertise. So it's a very cool way to learn. And then purpose, it's always nice to know that you contribute for something very meaningful. So I wanted to give you a few examples from around the world of what is the ecosystem around data for good. So I strongly encourage you to go and have a look at the Humanitarian Data Exchange website, HDX. They have about 4,000 data sets, open data sets that you can use. And typically, if you want to make your CV and your LinkedIn profile shine a little bit, it's a very good idea to go there. You take a data set, you work on it, you build something, and you publish it on the website. That will be very useful for the organizations that publish that data. They can use the tool that you have built, and then you can nicely tie it to your profile to show what you are able to do. DataKind is probably the most famous organization around that. What they do, they gather data scientists together, and they start working on various issues. It's very, very broad what kind of social challenges they tackle. It can go from understanding homelessness to preventing death in home fires and so on. The Data for Development Challenge, this is something organized by the telecom operator Orange together with the Global Pulse. This is another great opportunity to participate into a competition where you can work on telecom data, aggregated telecom data, in order to develop tools that can be useful for African countries. Data analyst for social good, also a nice website to go on. A lot of resources available there, from trainings to a list of events and hackathons organized all over the world. But what's happening in Belgium? Luckily, we are very active in Belgium, and so obviously the Brussels data science community is very active, and soon the Ghent data science community will be even more active. But so we are very active in Belgium, and the Doctors Without Borders project we will present you a bit more in details. We've done a hackathon on marine biology, also led by Edward, by the way. There was this cool hackathon with Hack with Refugees. I don't know if you heard about it, but instead of complaining about all the refugees coming in our countries, those guys, it was at Transforma Brussels, and they organized a hackathon where it was not only about data, but it was completely, overall problematic. And the idea was to try to develop solutions that could better integrate the refugees in the country. Also a nice one. And then I really impact the company I work for. We develop data for good applications, big data applications, running on telecom data to work on those sustainable goals. So now time to go into the more details with Ward. He will present you that project we did with MSF, explain you how it was running. The main idea is that we wanted there to work on the donors. So we wanted to convert unregular donors into standing orders. And so we got the data from Doctors Without Borders, and we've put together a team of voluntary data scientists from the data science community to work together on this project. And so Ward will explain you the details.
So my title officially is data scientist in residence. There's plenty of data scientists that come into the hub, so we needed I couldn't just be a data scientist. So I'm data scientist in residence. I also could not be chief technical officer or something like that, because then I would have to wear a suit and tie, and that's not at all my style. So that's why I'm data scientist in residence. Acronym for that is DESIRE. So, joke actually, yeah. So here we have a little bit of the summary of what we did with the Médecins Sans Frontières. So the topic, as was already said, was an analysis of the donors, not just all the donors. It was what they call the middle donors, so the very big donors. They wanted to keep a personal relationship with them, so we haven't seen even the data. And then the small donors, they thought there was going to be too much data, so they wanted to spare us the big volumes of data and only gave us those middle donors. The team was around 15 data scientists. There was one data ambassador, which was me. So my task was in the first place to prepare the data so that people wouldn't have to struggle cleaning up the data and so on, but that the data would come clean and documented to all the participants to that project. Then all the participants to that activity had to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. I think it's very, very important. It was very important to Médecins Sans Frontières. It's even more important now with Procter & Gamble. And yeah, well, definitely you have to take those things serious, of course, because really that, especially with people like Procter & Gamble, they really give us access to their competitive advantage, that is worth literally millions of dollars to them. So it's that non-disclosure agreement really should be taken extremely seriously. Now we had a collaboration tool where we decided to use hackpads to facilitate communication between the different teams, between the different people that collaborated with us. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that was not really the most successful part of our collaboration. So the data, there was data about 1.5 million donations for Médecins Sans Frontières. That was big data for most of us. We were able to easily deal with that, and basically we would have preferred also to have all the data from the small donations rather than just those middle donors. I can understand Médecins Sans Frontières that they are a little bit reluctant to part with the data on the very big donors, and well, since they had a personal relationship with those people, our data analysis on that data would have been less important for them as well. And then the project, 4 evenings of teamwork to share the analysis and define priorities. At that point, we didn't have the access to the very nice rooms that we have in the buildings of AXA now. So, but there was another set of rooms that were made available in Transforma, Brussels. And then, well, we came together for 4 evenings, but all the work basically was done at home, so countless hours of homework. More about that later on as well. Okay, so the first task for us to do was to clean the data, but there was very little work to be done there, because the data was extracted from a database and basically was already clean. The only problem was that it was left truncated, so all the most recent data was left out. So we had a little bit of a problem with that, because we couldn't just do any type of analysis anymore. We had to take into account how the data was extracted from the database, and once again they did that to save on volume of the data. So probably our work would have been much more efficient if there would have been more communication with them before starting on the work. And then what we had to do there was to take into account RFM, or recency, frequency, and monetary value, and that monetary value basically came mostly from gift, and so our task was basically to qualify the donors. In other words, do a segmentation of that donor corpus. Could we define separate groups within those donors, and by defining those groups, assist the people of MSF to have a more direct, a more personal relationship with those different donors, with the individual groups within the donors. All right, so we started out with the explanatory phase of data analysis, and then there's been quite a bit of different avenues that were tested or tried out by those 15 different people that consisted or formed the group. Not everything obviously came into fruition, not everything led to actionable information, but we did manage to do at least quite a bit of results. In a second phase, we really looked also to churn. So, which donors were in danger of running away from MSF? Which donors were in danger of no longer continuing to make donations? So that's the main thing that that MSF was after as well. Right, so the first phase, explanatory data. I'm going to go very fast through these. These slides were actually created to report our activities to MSF, but they are not data scientists, so probably you will find a little bit too much, must I say, didactical things in here, but just to give you an idea of the variety of things that we've been working on. So we were working on segmentation, so the first thing that we wanted to do was a segmentation, of course. And as you can see from this graph, the first two axes of the strongest separators of that clustering, we didn't have clearly cut groups, so which made, of course, for a more interesting analysis as well. Right, so there were significant groups. So what we could do then is to work together with the people of MSF to see whether we could relate those groups that we found here in the clustering with real groups of in our donors, but we haven't gone that far. Then that's a transition analysis to see how we define different groups. Donors that were frequently giving, Then some were giving big donations, some were larger, smaller donations. And then some gave occasional donations, and then the third category that you see here is about the size of the largest donation. So we, together with those three criteria, we were able to define different sets of donors, and then see how people went from one category of donorship, I should say, to another. The main point that we have to see here is that here the, oh, I can't move my cursor over, but the where you see the O, that's the churners. So they will not go into the next donation. Right, so the main point here is that the regular donors were also the most fruitful for MSF. Then here the same thing, people who make regular donations also are the ones that give the highest occasional donations, which might be a little bit counterintuitive. Then we also did a geographical analysis to see where how the donations evolved from 1 year to another. So also assisting their MSF to check how they can best concentrate their efforts. Then Frank van den Berg from Timmy made a model with his Timmy software, where we had some very interesting results as well. We showed people from MSF how to use dashboards and how to create them, and how they can then use, for example, the Timmy software to check which donors have to be followed up with individual approaches. That's the next part of that dashboard. And quite a bit of effort went into trying to model when to expect the next gift. So here we have just one distribution of all the time lapses between two consecutive gifts. And then if that's the time of the last donation, then obviously if you are at time A, then you don't expect a donation yet. It's only when when you're far enough in the time at point B that you want to start getting worried, and that the person might be in trying to that we're not sure that we will get a next donation. Then instead of showing this as a histogram, we can also show it as a bar graph. And then instead of giving just one corpus of donors, we can try and see whether we can find patterns in that in the time between two donations. And then we see for some some factors that is indeed something that is a clear pattern, and where we should that we should include in the analysis. Then for others, clearly not. So that's also something. And where we can advise people from MSF which factors to take into account when looking at the potential churning. All right, so then we can, instead of just looking at one analysis, of course, we can look at the ensemble of the different things that we've tried out, and try and do an ensemble approach or a minority report. And then if everything points in the same direction, then we know that we have some real some real effects. All right, so what did we learn? We learned a lot. Well, first of all, we learned each other. So we learned to work with each other. We didn't know who the community was, so that's very nice to work together, and then that way know who's in the community. So that's definitely very nice. The one thing that we set out to do is to learn from each other. And all that homework was, well, a little bit counterproductive actually, because people came to those 4 evenings and told us what they did, but not always how they did it. And so one of the objectives, learning from each other, was not realized during this series of evening meetings. Now, what we did is then to agree that there should be something extra following on after those 4 evenings. And so we already had a lot of evenings where we discussed, for example, that Timmy software from Frank van den Bergen. Frank gave a very nice evening presentation, hands-on presentation, explaining how he used Timmy to do this kind of work. We have had people coming to present Python. We have had people coming to present R, and so on and so on. So all in response basically to the demand that was, or to the requests that were formulated by people who worked together here in the, with those 4 evenings. And then, yeah, that's probably the most important thing here. If you come together but only discuss your the results, then we don't really learn from each other. Then we have to have extra activities to take care of that part. And that's where I want to stop and give the mic back to Sébastien.
Okay, so just quickly to finish. So thank you, Edward. So you've seen, guys, how, I mean, an example of a sort of hackathon data for good project we've done. There were a lot of learnings for each participant, a lot of learnings for us as well in the way we need to organize those hackathons. There was a lot of learnings for Doctors Without Borders as well. So it was a great experience overall. So now, I hope you start to realize the power of data for good. You guys have very specific skill sets, very rare to find, and you can make a difference with those skill sets. So I really encourage you to start working on those data for good projects. How can you participate? Well, as a data scientist, obviously just join us and get your hands dirty. And if you know NGOs or if you are an NGO, just give us your data and we'll get the insights back to you and the rich information. So now it's just up to you guys. Just reach out, take initiatives. If you have a cool idea, you know an NGO that would be interested, just organize the hackathon. The whole community will be happy to support you to do that. So just don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact directly Edward or myself or Sam or Philippe. Anyone in the community will be happy to. Yeah, so by the way, there is a project, we're working on a project with the Red Cross. It's not confirmed yet when it will happen, probably later in the year, Q3, Q4 in the year. But that's something that we are preparing, and hopefully we'll be able to present other hackathon projects where you can participate. It's just about raising awareness. Most of the time, those NGOs, they would love to find those projects. It's just that they don't know about it. So we lack a bit of visibility. So this is also how you can help. If you know someone working for an NGO, you know they have some data, please reach out and we'll make it happen for them. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you liked this presentation. This presentation was held in the Brussels Data Science Community Meetup. If you want to know more of when these meetups are taking place, just check the link below. Bye-bye.